Hello, everybody. This is Hilary Sloan, and this is Driftwood Conversations. I'm talking with two friends of mine, Jim Berg and Frederick Fulmer. And I met them when I first came out here. It was all part of the art scene out here. So let's start with maybe each one of you introducing yourself and what your art is.
Frederick Fulmer. I am a painter. Yes, I'm also a teacher, taught different forms in the arts, painting, taught at schools, worked with Dee Dee Hirsch and suicide prevention, Dignity Center, which is an after-school program, and taught in schools as well. And a gallerist, yes. And
We'll talk about the residency after you introduce yourself.
We're going to be prompting each other, probably.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. That's the fun. It's like a real conversation.
Right.
Right.
Interruptions.
So I started this.
And if it's a couple, we're going to be correcting one another constantly.
I started this because I realized I was missing that, having those deep conversations with people. So that's what this is about. So
Sweet. All right. I'm going to go deep today.
yeah,
Is that-
I hope.
Hold on. Do you have seatbelts for now?
Go ahead.
Jim Berg. I am a writer, screenwriter, longtime, started back in the 80s working on sitcoms like The Golden Girls into the 90s with Roseanne and the Gilmore Girls, the Brady Bunch movies, and a bunch of other things, and enjoy it and still making it happen to this day.
You're doing plays now, too.
Doing theater. Have a play called Silver Foxes, which is playing around the country, and we've just been commissioned to write the sequel.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
excited.
great. I got to go to it.
Yeah. Well, it's coming to Palm Springs, so
Oh,
we'll let you know when that happens.
yeah. And
Next
I'll
year.
post it, too.
Fantastic.
I also know you as Jathar, which is the Joshua Tree Highlands Artist Residency. It's more than just a residency. You've been a major force in holding artists together. You had a gallery called JTAG. You brought artists together and great art to the high desert, which could have fallen into the void of tourist art. So talk a little about that.
well, I think when we originally came out here, we like to landscape and we like to decorate. So we ended up buying houses basically because we didn't want people living next to us that we didn't know. But then once we got them, we were like, well, we can only live in one place. So that's what we started renting them out. And we actually used a couple of the houses for artists. So that sort of started the residency back early in the day, back in 2007.
I'm going to back up because even the idea came from Frederick. He's always been the kind of artist that loves sharing ideas and getting together with other artists and talking about their process. So he was the one that first said, I wonder if artists would like to come to the desert and stay in our houses. So we thought, well, let's put out a call and we'll see if there are artists that are interested. Well, of course, artists are attracted to the desert. Joshua Tree has always been a haven for artists and musicians, rock climbers, hippies, meth addicts. But there's an energy out here that artists can appreciate and notice and feel right away.
Did the desert, when you first came out, what is that, about 25 years ago?
Yes.
1999.
Did you feel that the desert affected your work?
Yes. Oh, a lot. Well, just the expansiveness of it. I mean, I like the openness, the sunsets, the sunrise, the vegetation, the animals. The land just sort of has a different speak to it than any other place I've ever been. And I've always been attracted. We used to come out here even before we had a place out here. I would camp in the it was a monument then, and would camp in the national park. We came out on several occasions. We'd stay down at Desert Hot Springs and then come out for the day and go hiking in the park. So I've always had an affinity for this landscape. It's just something about it. And still to this day, I just relish the idea of being able to have, weekends out here or come out for a holiday and stay for a week or 2 weeks. It just really resonates with me.
We go back and forth from Los Angeles to Joshua Tree, and the quietude out here, the fact that you can actually hear your heartbeat and hear your inner voice and the messages that you get from beyond really helps tap into creativity. There's not a lot of distraction. There's not noisy neighbors or cars going down the street or sirens like you have in the city. So it enables you to really tune into your own inner voice, which really is the conduit to the art coming out of you.
You're talking about an expansive access to your own creativity. Am I right?
Yes, exactly. And who really can identify where that comes from? Some people call it God. Some people call it nature. Some people call it the deep recesses of the creative parts of their brain. Whatever it is, it's important to access as an artist. And any place or way that you can facilitate listening to that voice is a great exercise for your own creativity.
And, we see that a lot in the artists that come to the residency, how transformative it is for them. I mean, some of them have never been in the desert. So they go through like a week or 2 weeks of just acclimating to like being here. I mean, we're at 2,500 elevation, So for most people, that's a real transformation in terms of, I feel that, even going back and forth. It's sort of like it takes you a day or two to sort of acclimate to, oh, I'm at a different level here, you know. And the same thing with starting the gallery downtown, JTAG. I mean, that was really transformative in that there were all these new artists that had just come to the desert, and they were looking for a place to sort of get together and call home. And that's kind of what the gallery provided. I mean, it was really sort of a cooperative. At one point, I sort of took the reins and sort of had to orchestrate things a little more than you would for what would be called a cooperative, but it still provided that space. This energetic that was going on in the desert at that time was pretty phenomenal.
When did JTAG start?
It was around 2009, something like that. It originally came out of, at the Joshua Tree health food store, Linda had a space next door that she was fixing up, and I asked her, "Oh, could I do my the open studio here? Because I don't really have a studio at that time." And she said yes, and so I set up a show there for open studio, and with a friend of mine from LA, Karen Florick. And so we sort of showed our work, and then it was over. It was still sort of, it hadn't been completed. The interior was pretty raw. And so I asked her, I said, well, could I rent this from you and start a gallery? And she said yes. And so we did that. And so we were there for about 3 years, I think. And then Linda decided she wanted to do something else with the space. And then that's when we moved down to the far end where JTAG was for like the last 10 years.
So that's exactly when I came out, 2009. And I saw that space. And because I didn't know anybody, and I went to be able to meet locals.
Yeah, it definitely was a meeting place. And I think the nice thing about that was the artists that I encountered and introduced and brought to the gallery then got introduced to those other artists that they didn't know in the community. So then we sort of became this big family. Everybody knew each other. We all worked on the shows. We all hung the shows. It was good. It has a really warm place in my heart for all those encounters, And it allowed me the opportunity to meet them, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have met them. I would have been isolated in my home and never gone out, right? So it kind of it was a community space as well as a gallery.
Did Jathar start at the same time?
Jathar started in 2007.
Okay, so before that.
Yes.
That's right. You said you wanted it for the group, for the show, for Jathar.
Yeah.
So the residency sort of became a hub for artists who didn't live here, and JTAG was a hub for the local artists. So the residency, people came from all over the US and international, as you know, because one of our goals was for artists to come here and not only explore new avenues in their creativity, but to make friends with local artists. And I know you made friends with some artists and as well as other local artists, and there's lifelong friendships that are formed with us and artists, with the community and artists. It's an offshoot of what we did that we had no idea would happen. In fact, I don't think we knew anything about what would happen when we started the residency, which is probably the best way to do it. We just blindly said, okay, here you can come for 7 weeks and we'll see what happens.
And then we were fortunate enough that through that outreach, I mean, we ended up becoming really close friends with Steve and Ruth Riemann. And then they became part of the board for JTR and then also provided a space for artists to come. And Steve has like an amazing studio. They were so generous. I mean, they've at least 25 artists over the years they've housed. You know, Steve has passed, but Ruth is still here, and Ruth is still an integral part of JTAR and, you know, continues to support us and, you know, work with us and greeting artists.
And the artists that Steve and Ruth housed became very, very close to them. Steve and Ruth always referred to the artists as the children they never had. And now we're talking, the residency is about to start its 20th year. So these are long-term friendships. And now some of these artists that were their children have their own children. So then now Ruth has grandchildren out there.
Yeah. And a lot of the artists that came to the program early on are now local residents of Joshua Tree because they were so attracted. Their experience was so unbelievable that they wanted to be here to continue creating work.
So there's about 10 artists that have moved here full time, and that energy is growing. And so it's again like the family is not only around the world, but it's also around the neighborhood now. And it feels great.
I'm listening to you, and two things are coming up really clearly. I can see which the audience can't. And there's so much love between the two of you. And it's just exquisite. And that must come out in the people that you house.
45 years in the making.
Wow. Oh, your relationship. Holy mackerel. But the other thing I was going to ask you, things are changing. They're changing all over the world. They're changing politically. They're changing here. JTAG is gone. JTHAR has become a new entity in a way. Steve Riemann passed away. There's so many changes. And yet, the love that you guys are holding has spread through this art community, past Venice, past the United States. Do you ever get a sense of how big and amazing that is?
I think we're always touched by it because, you know, once people leave, we still are in communication with a lot of people. And they do occasionally return here and we see them and we have dinners and, you know, reminisce. And we have cultivated that with our artists, you know, some more than others. But, you know, an example would be Sandy Rodriguez, who she was here, like 4 years ago?
During the pandemic.
During the pandemic. And she started on a project she was doing. And then all of a sudden she skyrocketed. And she has like 8 shows coming this year. Well, Sandy has come back 3 times because her studio space in Mar Vista is not large enough for her to do the large scale pieces, which our studio accommodates. So she's been back 3 times. She's there right now. And we just had dinner with her the other night. And it's just like, we're like family. We know each other. So yeah, that does exist.
But we usually forget about it. Running the residency is a lot of work. And we do it all. It's like a pop and pop organization. And you can get really caught up in the mire, the daily mire of all it takes to keep the residency afloat. And it's quite a bit of work. So occasionally we'll get an email or a phone call or read something somebody wrote about the residency, and it takes your breath away. because what you forget is we take the majesty of where we live for granted. But being here for 7 weeks as a break from your ordinary life is really transformative for people. And we've changed the course of their career and often change the course of their lives by them having a time and space to evaluate their life, because everybody's caught up in the mire of their jobs and their families. So I get gobsmacked when it's reflected back to me what the profound effect the residency has had on people.
I just want to add that the residency covers writers, photographers, painters, sculptors,
All mixed media.
mixed media, whoever's put in an application.
And anyone can apply.
Okay. Performance also. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, you have. And it's incorporated that.
Yeah.
Jim, particularly, you're a writer, which I've done visual arts and I've done writing. So it's a much more internal thing. How does all of this affect your writing?
All of this meaning where the
Where
beauty,
you
we
live, both places, because there's a real joy of Venice too. LA,
Yes.
Venice.
Well, being near the ocean, the energy of the ocean is really magnificent too. That's a good question. I am such a working man that I've been doing it for so long, and I never had the luxury of waiting for inspiration to strike. There were jobs like on TV shows where it's like, you're in that office, you have a show the next day and you have to write a script, and the star throws the script away because they don't like it. So then this can happen at midnight. So by 9 the next morning, you have a total new script. So my point is, sometimes you have to just access that creative energy, whether it exists at that moment or not. But I think being in the desert is a shortcut to accessing that energy, because you get to really hear what I said earlier, your inner voice, all the claptrap, what other people are looking for, and noise that surrounds us every day doesn't necessarily reflect the words that are in our hearts. And to be able to really zero in on what makes our hearts unique, so which makes our output of creativity unique, that is the gift, I believe. And that makes us different. And that's what makes our art stand out.
And also, you use a lot of this time when you're in the desert. Not that you do some in Venice, but you're more focused on the other work with script writing or writing plays. But out here, you give yourself the opportunity to sort of focus on your own personal work and writing things that you want to write about, as opposed to something that somebody's buying. So, I mean, I see that all the time. And you have that time because you don't have the distractions.
And to talk about being a late bloomer, I've had writing partners through the years and worked with people on jobs, but I'm realizing I really love my own creative process. I'm in my 60s and I'm figuring out what my creative process is. I know how I can work on a script. I can do a little, then go do the dishes, do a little writing, go walk around the property and look at the birds and look at the cactus. So I feel like for me, the best is yet to come. And I know you have that same feeling, and it's unusual at our age to feel that, but I'm just getting started. I'm finally harnessing my voice, because there's so many reasons why our voices are squelched. I think for me, it was being a self-hating gay kid and hated by other people, obviously, as well, which caused the self-hatred. So it takes years in therapy to slough that off, but I think the desert accelerates sloughing off other people's concepts of us and us being able to take hold of our true self.
That is so great, because one thing I'm observing, I mean, it's been obvious in culture now, in the new culture through magazines and TV shows, that the seniors are approaching new ground. We're not what our parents were. My mother died a good 10 years before how old I am now. And she was old. She was old by 40.
Yeah.
Her ideas were old. And the art that's coming out of us, I think, is coming from a whole new place, has nothing to do with mature, senior experience. It has to do with something that's breaking free in all of the restrictions that the other side of this is trying to impose. Do you feel anything like that?
I feel like our generation, maybe boomers, are the first generation to break the constraints of our parents' generation, to eschew all those conditions put on us to be what you need to be doing at a certain age. The other thing, do you have kids?
No.
We don't have kids either. So I think that's another aspect of it, that we just have ourselves to take care of. And I think being an artist requires a lot of self-nurturing. I mean, there's amazing artists that have raised families and they've been able to do that and raise wonderful kids. But there's something about just taking care of yourself. And for us, the artists in the residency have been kids. We've been able to take care of them and guide them and give them our wisdom because we've attained a lot of wisdom, all of us at this age. And not to say that there haven't been great older artists through history. We're not obviously the first set, but I think the boomer generation is sort of leading that charge.
I think there's something new coming, and none of us know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And, I don't know how much longer we have. I'm older than you are. So 10 days, 10 years, 20 years, it doesn't really matter. It's the next generation that will come up in this energy and these experiences that we're willing to go out with.
And I think it requires a certain amount of openness. You can get very set in your ways, but to be open to everything that's coming around the corner. I feel like it's adapt or die. If you stop learning and sharing and having input, you stay stagnant. And stagnancy is the death of creativity. So we're always going, how do we do this? Can somebody teach us how to figure out this Photoshop? Can we figure out this program? I think that's important. And another thing that's nice about the residency is it's most of the artists are younger than us. Almost all of the artists are younger than us. So we get a lot of back and forth with different generations and also different cultures because they come from all over the world.
Frederick, how is it affecting you and your painting? I've seen changes, but
Right now, as I've gotten, well, I'm 73, so it's like every day is a gift. So, and I acknowledge that. Perplexed. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of things, I go in my studio and I think about a lot of works that I'd like to do. It's a little more difficult sitting down and actually taking action to do some of them. I mean, it comes in bits and pieces. And I think also not running a gallery or having a show or a place physically to show stuff is sort of put aside some of that demand to like create, create, create. And so now I'm at a place where I just really want to genuinely dive in to create works that are important to me. And I don't know how to explain what important means, because that's a discovery that happens on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean, art is life. So if I'm out gardening or, I love planting trees and I think about the concept of planting trees. Actually, that is what a thematic that I want to go back and focus in on. But, it's like the tree's going to be here long after I've gone. And it also contributes to the environment. So I've always been an environmentalist from even when I was in elementary school to middle school to high school, been involved with, organizations that have done that. I was just talking to somebody the other day about the Bread and Puppet Theater in New York. They do all these demonstrations. They walk through, and I have fond memories of being a part of that and being in those demonstrations. And it's sort of a call to arms right now, I think, where we're at politically. And so that weighs a lot on my mind. I don't know exactly what to do about that, but I am concerned. So, I mean, maybe some of the work, I've not always been an artist that would do political stuff, but maybe it's time to do political paintings, and talk about the time that we live in. So I don't know. It's exciting. It's just new. It's different. I don't really have a clear direction of where it's going to go, but I trust in the process of just being in that space. And obviously, being in the desert helps with, making that happen. I mean, just the time we're living in is so intense.
Absolutely. And nobody, not politically,
No.
any system seems to be imploding.
Yes.
So,
The wheels are off.
yeah, so what we have is creativity. We can create a whole new government. We can create a whole new healthcare system. We are creating friendships
Yeah.
in a new way. It's not like what we were trained to do.
Right.
Oh, you have to call your friend every week. No, I don't.
Right. I have a therapist, a Jungian therapist, because I've always been involved in Jungian theories. And she said, you just got to stop making the list. And I'm going, wow, that's really hard because I'm a big list. I like checking things off the list. But as soon as we have this conversation, I go, okay, I haven't done a lot of lists this week. So her focus, what we're telling me, was like, you have to reignite or find that soul again. And I keep going, well, yeah, I've always been really connected to that, but I'm having a hard time reconnecting or finding where that soulfulness is, that creative soulfulness of how we create. But I'm exploring it, but it's sort of an absurd thing to think, oh, I can't find my soul. Somehow in this time that we're living in, we sort of lost the sense of soul and what that means to the individual, or maybe for the globally. What is our soul? Has our nation lost the soul? So I'm looking for my soul again. I don't know where I dropped it off and how it got off the checklist, but now it's back on the checklist. I guess she would agree that that's a good thing to do, to search for that soulfulness in ourselves and how that helps us live a richer life. So that's kind of where I'm at. I want to reignite that in myself.
That's a good point. I think as a nation, since this past election, feels like we've lost our collective soul. And maybe our job is individually to find it in ourselves, and that will help the nation as opposed to trying to solve the world's problems.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I do too. I agree completely. And what I hear from a lot of different disciplines and groups out there, because I'm tuning in wherever I can, is that it is about we've come to the individuality of ourselves. We have developed that, how we live, expressing ourselves through art, through our house, through materialism. It's all become so individual, and that's okay. But now there is this collective that we're becoming aware of. How do we work with the whole world? How do we work with the planet? How do we care about somebody in Syria that doesn't have enough to eat and we're struggling here? How do we think about refugees? How do we, this goes on and on.
Right.
And that awareness, what I keep hearing, that awareness that there is something to consider, something to think about, is a search for the soul.
Yes.
Because that makes you bigger than the mundane.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, all of these factors play into finding ourselves again
In a new way.
in a new way. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing right now in the States with immigration and people wanting them to send them back over them. I mean, it just sounds absurd. What kind of country does something like this? This is not the America that I was waving flags for when I was a little kid. It's like it's turned into something I don't even recognize it anymore. It's so heartless. And I'm just really compassionate about stuff like that. It makes me tear up just thinking about what people are going to have to experience.
I don't know that he's going to accomplish everything he's
Well, I don't think so either. But still, just the idea that you would put forth an idea like that for a country, that's a goal of a country, to get rid of people because they don't look like you.
It's also interesting to get a sense of what's on younger people's minds, because when the artists apply for the residency, they all do a proposal and a statement about the work they'd like to accomplish. So it's very interesting to hear what's on their minds. And every year, the concepts change. This year, it's a lot about migration
Yes.
and queer identity and climate issues. And it's always been different, but and a lot of people reference the political situation and feeling a need to connect with other people.
What do you mean by migration? Them moving or?
No, I think it's refugees, people having to leave their countries and start a new life, and what that feels like. A lot of the artists have been refugees, or their parents have migrated here, or what is going on and will go on at the US and Mexico border is very prevalent in people's applications. So I think, and I have high hopes for the younger generations to take up the mantle with us and see if we can make change through art.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard on the news today, there was this talk about in Syria. So when Assad was there, people had to leave because their lives were in danger. So now that he's gone, all these Syrians from different parts of the world are now thinking about coming back to Syria. That's a whole other setting up a new life again, or a life that had passed and changed, and now they're going to come back. I mean, same thing with if we're sending people out of the country, they have to set up new lives all over again.
Yeah. And where do the resources?
So I think that migration is about that global movement all over the world, depending on, what's going on or who's in charge, right?
And as a Jewish American, we know our ancestors had to flee the Holocaust, and many countries shut their doors. So I think we have a personal responsibility to do what we can, because we're all in this together.
Yeah. For me, it's about consciousness changing.
Yes.
I don't know all the physical acts I can take. That has to be day by day. Somebody call me, can you give? Or do you want to be here for someone? Those are things I can make a decision in the moment. But the consciousness to be open, to be understanding, to listen to different sides, even sides I don't like. I think it's really important. I'm going to digress or take us a little bit of different direction.
We'll go wherever you take us.
What were some of your biggest challenges that got you up to this time in your life, personally or together?
Well, I know one of your challenges as a young person was being in the hospital a lot, being a kid who was sick and didn't have the mobility that you wanted, which helped develop your passion for abstract art and nature, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
What took you through it? So that question really
Well, I guess
went to this one.
growing up young, I did have quite a few illnesses that required me to be in the hospital. First one was sort of exploratory surgery, which was almost unheard of at that time. And, medicine wasn't what we know as medicine today. And sort of just having that, I couldn't do a lot of things that other kids would do. I couldn't play certain sports for a long time, which got me interested in the sports as I got older, and sort of set goals for myself that I wanted to achieve that. So that was good. But I guess throughout all that time, even as a young child, art has always played an important role in my life. It was not my touchstone. So, and I've always been I lived in a rural area. So I was always in the woods and listening to nature and the creeks running through the forest. And, nature, it's just always been a part of who I am. That's why I love being in the desert. I mean, it's an odd terrain. It's very mystical, but I like that. It's sort of like the mystery of life, right? You go and discover that, and then just visuals, thinking about, oh, this used to be an ocean at one point in time. I mean, and then all of a sudden everything erupted and, right? I just find it fascinating. But I mean, I guess that was the biggest thing. And, just the people I encountered. I worked a lot in New York, and I was always involved in the arts there, worked with some pretty major players back in the 70s, worked at galleries.
Lived in Soho when it was warehouses. I think being a starving artist in New York
Yeah.
was a formative experience.
And that was one of those experiences. I would say gentrification has always been an issue for artists as well as myself. Because every time we'd set up a gallery or we move into a neighborhood, the next thing you know, here comes the corporate entities. And so I'm sort of a little anti-corporate because I don't think they played fair. But I did that. I started a gallery in New York. When I moved to Venice, I started a cooperative gallery on Abbot Kinney back in the day. Sort of been involved in these arts communities. Did the Venice Art Walk every year for many, many years for the clinic, for the health clinic, for underprivileged people that didn't have insurance. So, I mean, these are things that I believe in. I believe as an artist, it's our opportunity to express ourselves and to help other people. I think that's what art does, really. It opens up a window for people to experience themselves or experience others in different ways than they might otherwise. I think art is a very powerful spokesperson. I mean, hence the artist residency, because I believe in artists, and I believe artists have a different vision of sharing with us how the world could be better. I think most of the time, most artists, their trajectory is about making life better for people and for themselves. And they have ability to see things that other people don't normally see because we've been trained in a different way and we function from a different place in our physical bodies that reacts to where we're at or the landscape. So, I think artists are a special breed. Yeah. I do. I mean, they're very different, and not to discount other people's abilities in mathematics and science, but artists just have this different connection with the earth, I think.
Well, could also be tapping into creativity.
Yes.
Which mathematicians and scientists and, geologists, a lot of people can do if they open to it.
And I think one of the reasons I like being an advocate is because I think that venue of arts, the visual artist, have not gotten quite as much attention as other forms of the arts. And I mean, I guess it's changed, but there's a lot of artists out there. There's a lot of artists that haven't had an opportunity to share their voice. If you're looking at art and thinking about all the big mega galleries and stuff like that, yeah, that's fine and well. And yes, I appreciate all that. I love the work, but it's hard for artists starting out to sort of be heard or seen. And I think that's one of the things I hope that the residency allows for people to begin to be able to be seen and heard in a way that they might not otherwise, because it's hard getting into a gallery. It's hard having a show. These are not easy tasks. It's hard getting a grant. For us, just as a residency, we've tried for many years to get grants. It just doesn't happen.
But speaking of being seen and heard, and getting back to your question about overcoming obstacles, I think one which you don't hear about much anymore is just growing up queer, because we're of the age where the time and place we grew up, it was a liability, more than a liability. You were going to hell. You couldn't talk about it. You couldn't share it. It was something you keep to yourself. So I think it's part of what makes us artists and gives us a special gift, because we had to hear other things and look for different messages than everybody else was getting and accepting that didn't work for us. To this day, when the younger generations are fully accepting their identities, it's something we had to figure out how to have a relationship, how to have a marriage. It wasn't life-threatening, though it could be for some people.
It's in some areas.
It was life-threatening.
Yeah, you could still get arrested.
Being, about 5 years older than you, I definitely felt that as a gay person, and not wanting well, first of all, you were taught not to identify, to pretend and be something other than what you were. And you only shared that with a small, intimate group of people that you knew were gay. But yeah, it was really hard. I mean, I didn't physically come out until I was 35 years old. I didn't come out to I think my parents knew, but they didn't. But, that was a hard thing to do. Like 35 and coming out to my mother, Did it
You knew early on?
Oh, I knew?
Did
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I did. Yeah.
We know.
But you just sort of figure that, yeah, as a young age. I mean, I didn't know what it meant. I remember somebody when I was growing up, they said, I think they called me a hobo. And I was like, a hobo? What does that mean? Well, they were saying homo, I think. I heard it as hobo.
Call me a
You
hobo.
always got called stuff like you're a sissy, you're a fag, it's just like, it's just a stab to your heart. And so then you go inside yourself and you have to figure out, okay, well, what is my identity going to be? How am I going to present myself to the world? And so then you do this false presentation of who you are. It's really hard. It's really heart-wrenching to have to play that game. And I mean, I think I would say I'm sort of bisexual. I mean, I chose a preference. I love women. I've been with women, but, I think I would probably more with women because that's what the culture demanded of a guy. That's what you did, If you're going to be normal and not sick, which, not till what was it, 1970? We were taken off the list for if you're in mental illness.
Oh,
if you
forgot
were
about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, all these things are in the, hence the Jungian therapy.
And then if you're fortunate enough to move to a city like we did to New York, where you start to accept yourself and meet other people and begin to think, oh, I'm okay. This is a valid lifestyle. And then AIDS hits.
I was going to ask about that because I was in New York in the 70s,
So were we.
and that was very difficult.
Well, I think I probably only have 2 or 3 people left from that period, and I knew a lot of people. I mean,
The arts community.
it was really devastating.
I mean,
People,
fashion designers.
the whole world, yeah.
Yeah.
All I've read, some whole
Generation.
So here again, that I guess I would say that's kind of a trauma in a way, because then you're sort of left hanging. I didn't feel guilty, but I did think, well, how did I escape that? Because I wasn't the choir boy. So, I ran in the same circles that a lot of these people that got AIDS and died. But then you have to start all over again because you don't have any friends. You don't have any confidence. You don't have people that you had a history with. So you sort of left to your own self to sort of figure out. And I guess maybe some of that, having the residency and wanting to engage other people and learn about ideas from other people, is about that as well. I mean, it probably came out of that, not intentionally, but that desire, that need to want to belong and connect with other people and make a history. It's probably part and parcel to that, but
To creating family.
Yes. A new kind of family.
Exactly, because, we're old enough that most of our families have passed or we've disconnected from them for whatever reason. So chosen family is a really important way to survive these times. And we both tend to be home buddies a little bit. So the residency almost forces us to interact and make friends and create a family, a new family.
Where do you think your resilience to not only survive, but to thrive, where does that come from for you?
well, I just like creating stuff. So that's my thrive. It's like no matter what, it could be cooking, it could be baking a pie, it could be making a new dish, it could be going and starting a new painting on canvas, So I think that's where, I mean, for me, it's all about creative process, and it's about energy. I mean, I did a lot of things, I did a lot of study, piezoelectric energy, and dealt a lot in that in my career with healing. I mean, I have background as a yoga Pilates teacher. So the esoteric arts I've always been involved in. And that also comes out of that Jungian theory. The things that he talked about, our dreams, remembering our dreams, acting on our dreams. So I think that's where to thrive comes from for me.
And I think my method of survival is laughter.
Yeah.
As I start to cry, talking about laughing, but they're very connected. It's an involuntary movement that comes out of our body that we don't necessarily plan.
Yeah. And it's very healing. Laughter is extremely healing.
And making people laugh is, for me, it's God.
And he does pretty good at that.
Especially a stranger, not especially, but someone that is very stern, and you can say something silly and watch their face break open, and this peal of laughter comes from somewhere that they didn't expect. And then you have this beautiful connection.
I realized in my life, I have always picked people that are funny to be around. There's some particularly in the most intimate of relationships, they had to be funny. I wish I picked Rich, but it didn't work.
Rich and funny, if you could find that.
But if you could find it, yes.
And I think that's one of the things that we do in our own personal lives is, we're always conjuring up these different scenarios or, oh, what happened to the concierge today or blah, blah, blah. It's just banter, and it's done with a sense of humor to get you to laugh and get outside of yourself. And I think we do that a lot. And I think that's a good survival technique.
Life is serious, and
Yeah.
shit happens every day, and you have to as an adult, you have to fix it and figure out a way to move on. Especially if you're responsible for other people. You always have to be aware and solve problems. And to be silly in the midst of that is life-saving.
It really is. And that's what this whole podcast is about. The driftwood idea is that you're going to get weathered by stuff.
Oh,
you're going to just,
a lot.
and somehow you can become more beautiful.
Yes.
So I have one last question to wrap things up.
Oh, no.
Although we could talk forever. And I would like to do it individually for both of you. If you were to meet yourself now, would you hang out with yourself?
What a great question. I am still working on becoming my authentic self because I've spent a lifetime of covering it up. I don't think I'm there yet. So if I met myself, I wouldn't know immediately, that's a fucking cool guy. If there was a conversation happened, I would see a spark and I would hear a turn of phrase or hear a funny comment and go, oh, I like him. But it would take a minute because I don't think I present authentically yet.
What a good goal, though.
Yeah.
Always, because I don't know if it's something that's ever finished.
Some people seem to be, boom, who they are. They wear it on their face. It's there. For me, I think it was covered up for so long that it pops out, then goes back in.
Because I think just in present day time, and for all the 45 years I've known him, he has some magnetic quality. I don't know what that is exactly, but he's like a magnet. So I think you would resonate with if you met yourself. Because I see that with other people. I'm going like, wow, I wish I had that gift. And in terms of looking at I don't know. I think I would. I have a lot of good experiences and knowledge, and I'm an artist. And because I like artists, I think I would be interested in myself.
Yeah, that question came up in one of the episodes. And I thought, oh, what a great question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for me, I answered this in one of the other episodes was, yes, because I'm interesting. I never know what I'm going to get into. Have to hang out for a while to say, now what do you do? Who are you? What do you believe today?
Yeah.
Some people can say that's ungrounded and other people can say that's magnificent.
Yeah, well, thank you for pointing that out. That's true. I think through it all, there is a spark, and my joy manages to always be there. So I guess maybe I would be attracted to that. I think it's in the eyes. It's a spark in the eyes. I'm seeing it in your eyes right now. And sometimes when you meet somebody with that sparkle, that's all it takes. Words don't even have to come into the picture.
Yeah.
The eyes.
It's what I was seeing in the two of you when you were looking at Frederick earlier. Jim was looking at Frederick. It was just the love. It's love.
Well, we're a team.
Yeah.
We're a solid team. And to me, because we've been together so long, people ask, is there a secret to a long relationship? And for me, it's luck. But I think it's also respect, that you respect what that person does and wants to do with their life. And part of being in a relationship is to lift them up and help them. And we each have skills that the other doesn't. And when you put them together, it seems as if you can accomplish anything. And I feel like the residency is an example of that. It was a small spark of an idea that we had. And now we're 20 years later and it's thriving. And it's because the two of us just boop, boop, boop. We come at it and we want each other to exceed and we want to succeed together.
And it changed and transformed. I can't remember whether you were really that on board in it because it would take away from our time, but he definitely got on board. And then we started inviting writers as well because that was part of his arts form. So it was a good thing. You got to realize he's a writer. So when he meets people and they just sort of, like I said, like gravitate towards it, but he does all the question and answers. He's diving deep. I tell people that I say, watch out because you're going to end up in a script. Because I've never seen anybody. I just stand there and listen because I can learn everything from everybody just by the questions that he asks them. Because he really is deeply interested, almost to the point of being too personal, but he goes there and he gets away with it.
I'm very curious about people. When I meet people, I instantly want to get a handle on them. So you're where are you from and where did you go and why did you go and who did you meet and who did you love and did that take you? And I do get away with it because there's no malice there. I'm generally interested in putting pieces of the puzzle together.
But I mean, most people wouldn't do that when they first met somebody.
Yeah, maybe my
Shooters are a little, you don't have any passions.
I think that's great.
Well, and it also speaks to our different qualities, what happens when they get put together. When I met Frederick, he was different than anybody I had ever met. We literally had nothing in common. And I was at such a formative point in my life. He taught me about art, about metaphysics, about spirit, things that never came into my consciousness. So I think it's our different skill sets somehow come together and it works. And whether it's something people connect to in me or connect to at him or the chemistry of our combination, it's something that is put us right here sitting with you today, that you felt that I want to talk to these guys and see what they're all about.
Yeah.
We're the Mutt and Jeff. To use a really old term, but nobody in your audience will probably even know what that means.
Never know. Anyway, thank you. Is there anything else you want to wrap up before we?
I could keep talking.
Well, we'll do another.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been a journey.
Yeah, a lot.
Brought up a lot of stuff, emotional stuff, just released for going back, having those memories. It's just an interesting thing about the mind. I'm fascinated by the mind.
I relate to what you're talking about. I meet people in the street. Bob actually does too. And we start talking.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're best friends. We don't even know their name.
Bob is a good
He's a good talker.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. But there is something about really being genuinely interested about somebody, lets them release all of those constraints like you were talking about. So you become real. I don't think you're hiding at all or not authentic. I don't see that. But a little reserved at times, I've seen that. And that can be very appropriate.
Absolutely. But this conversation was so real and so visceral. Look at us. We laughed. We cried. We got answers to questions we've been asking ourselves. So thank you for having this chat with us.
Good therapy.
Yeah. And you know what word keeps coming up through all the episodes? Spark.
Huh.
Sparking. Miri started it with talking about, through her illness, a very serious illness, she decided she loved life. She wasn't ready to leave. Before that, she was judging it from where her career was at and, oh, what am I doing here and why am I here? And then after was just look at this beautiful planet. And she brought up sparking other people. That spark of life that ignites in you when whatever you've gone through. And sometimes because you've gone through the toughest time, this life comes out of you and you just go, I'm so glad to be alive and I love you.
Yeah.
That sparking other people comment, I think we can tie it back into the residency because that's one of the things we like to do is be cheerleaders, because carving out a career as an artist is hard, writer or artist. And you get so much rejection that to have people going, wow, that's really interesting. You're good. Keep going with that. That's, I think, maybe the most important thing we provide other than the 7 weeks and the stipend, to have people in your corner that are rooting for you to succeed is something we couldn't be prouder to provide.
But those 7 weeks and the stipend is not a small.
Not to be sneezed at.
No, because artists also do not get any kind of funding easily, and we touched on that a little. So thank you. As my conversation with James and Frederick ended, I was struck by how love, creativity, and community intersect in their lives. Their relationship is a testament to the power of partnership, how two very different people can complement each other, filling in the missing pieces and creating the artist residency that has touched lives and shaped careers for over 20 years. In our conversation, they shared what it was like growing up gay when it was far from safe, how they sustained a 40-year relationship despite their differences, and the immense joy they find in fostering artistic expression through the Joshua Tree Highlands Artist Residency. We talked about challenges, resilience, the power of community, and the spark, the magic that ignites in the heart and ripples outward. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to learn more about Jthar at www.jthar.com. Follow their work, support the artists in the residency, and if you're an artist yourself, consider applying for this transformative experience. I'd also like to thank my editor, Jennifer Longworth, of Bourbon Barrel Podcasting, for her incredible support in bringing these conversations to life. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Driftwood Conversations. Until next time, may you find and share your spark in the world.